My daughter-in-law baked cookies laced with lies about my past. Oh, child, let me tell you something that still twists my heart like a wet rag being wrung out. I remember the day it all came crashing down, the scent of vanilla and chocolate wafting through my kitchen, warm and inviting, like a hug from the oven. My daughter-in-law, Emily, stood there with a platter of fresh-baked cookies, her smile as sweet as the treats she offered. "These are for you." "Mom," she said, her voice light, almost too light as she set them down on the counter. My son, David, beamed beside her, his arm around her waist, proud as could be. We were celebrating. The ultrasound had just confirmed they were having a little girl, my first grandchild. But as I bit into that cookie, crumbly and perfect, I had no idea it was laced with something far more bitter than sugar, lies, rumors, pulled straight from the dusty pages of my past, twisted to paint me as some unfit monster who shouldn't be anywhere near that baby. I froze mid-chew when David cleared his throat, his eyes avoiding mine. "Mom," he started, his voice hesitant, like he was walking on eggshells. "Emily and we've been talking about the baby and, well, about you watching her sometimes." My heart skipped. I'd been dreaming of those grandma days, rocking chairs, storybooks, the soft coos of a newborn. But then he said it. "We found some old diaries in the attic, stuff about your younger days. The wild parties, the mistakes. We think, maybe it's best if we hire a nanny instead. You know, to be safe." "Safe? From me?" The room spun a little, the vanilla turning sour on my tongue. Those diaries were mine, buried for decades. Confessions of a foolish girl who'd learned her lessons the hard way. How had they gotten them? And why twist them into weapons? Emily just stood there, her eyes wide with feigned concern. But I saw the flicker, the calculation. She'd baked those cookies to soften the blow, but they were poisoned with her agenda. Her fear that I'd steal her spotlight as the perfect mother. I set the cookie down, my hands trembling just a bit. "David," I whispered, "those were my private thoughts. From before you were even born." But he shifted uncomfortably. Glancing at Emily for reassurance, she nodded subtly, her hand on his shoulder, guiding him like a puppet. In that moment, the fresh start I'd felt when they moved in nearby shattered. Welcoming her had been my joy, family dinners, shared laughs. But now, it felt like betrayal baked right into our home. How do you fight lies spun from your own truths? I didn't know yet, but child, I was about to learn. The sting of it all, the in-law chill that seeped into my bones, pushed me toward a path I never thought I'd take, opening up wounds to heal them. But let's go back, shall we? To before the cookies, before the lies, to when life felt as warm and steady as a summer afternoon. You see, my days had settled into a rhythm I cherished after all these years. I'm Evelyn, 62 now, widowed for 8, living in that cozy, 2-story house on Maple Street, where the hydrangeas bloom pink every spring. The neighborhood hasn't changed much. Kids on bikes, neighbors waving over fences. But I've softened with time, like well-worn leather. Mornings start with coffee on the porch, steam curling up as I watch the sun peek over the rooftops. The bitter brew wakes me, grounds me, reminds me of Harold, my late husband, who always took his black, no sugar. We'd sit there together once, planning our empty nest adventures, but cancer took him too soon, left me with memories and a quiet house. David, my only child, lives just a mile away now with Emily. He works as an engineer, steady job, good man, takes after his father in that quiet strength. We raised him right, or so I thought, church on Sundays, family values, the importance of honesty. After Harold passed, David checked on me daily at first, mowing the lawn, fixing leaky faucets. "Mom, you're not alone," he'd say, hugging me tight. Then he met Emily at a work conference 3 years back. She was vibrant, a graphic designer with a laugh that filled rooms, her dark hair always in a neat ponytail. I liked her immediately, thought she brought light back into David's eyes. When they got engaged, I threw myself into the wedding plans, baked the rehearsal dinner pies myself, apple and pecan, the crust flaky from years of practice. "You're going to be the best mother-in-law," Emily said then, squeezing my hand. And I believed it. After the honeymoon, they bought a starter home nearby, and our lives intertwined like vines. Sunday brunches at my place. I'd make pancakes, the sizzle of batter on the griddle mixing with their chatter. Emily would help chop fruit, her knife steady, sharing stories of her own family, Distant parents, no siblings. "You're like the mom I never had," she'd say, and I'd glow inside. Work kept me busy, too. I volunteer at the local library. Shelving books, reading to kids on Tuesdays. The smell of old pages, the hush of the stacks, it soothes me. Afternoons, I'd garden, dirt under my nails, pulling weeds with a satisfying tug. Life wasn't perfect. Nights could feel long. Echoes of Harold's absence, but it was mine, stable. And when Emily announced the pregnancy 5 months ago, oh child, my world lit up. I knit booties, pale yellow yarn soft in my fingers, dreaming of holding that grandbaby. "We'll need you, Mom," David said. And I pictured it all, pushing a stroller down the sidewalk, the baby's tiny hand in mine. Emily seemed thrilled too. We'd shop for cribs together, her hand on her belly giggling over names. But looking back, there were hints, weren't there? Tiny cracks in the facade. Emily's questions about my past, casual at first. "What were you like in your 20s, Evelyn?" She'd ask over tea, her eyes curious. I'd laugh it off, share light stories, the dances, the road trips, but nothing deep. Those diaries in the attic? Relics from my wilder days before Harold tamed my spirit. A time of mistakes, a brief fling, bad choices with friends who partied too hard. I got out, grew up, but I kept them as reminders, lessons in forgiveness, in rising above. Never thought they'd be weaponized. Emily must have found them during one of her helpful cleaning sprees, when she offered to organize the attic. "Let me handle it," she'd insisted, and I'd trusted her. Foolish me. As the pregnancy progressed, our bond felt stronger. Or so I thought. We'd bake together sometimes, cookies ironically. Her hands kneading dough, flour dusting the counter like snow. "This baby is going to love Grandma's treats," she'd say. But now, replaying it, her smiles seemed sharper, her hugs a touch tighter. Was she sizing me up, planning? I didn't see it then. Life was normal, sweet even. Until the first clue slipped in, quiet as a shadow lengthening at dusk. It started small, like a pebble in my shoe, irritating but easy to ignore at first. One evening, about a month before the cookie incident, David called to cancel our usual Friday dinner. "Emily's not feeling well," he said. His voice rushed over the phone. Morning sickness again. Understood, pregnancy could be rough, but when I offered to bring soup, he hesitated. "Nah, Mom, we're good. She just needs rest." Click. The line went dead, and I stood there in my kitchen, pot simmering on the stove, the aroma of chicken broth filling the air. Odd, I thought, but shrugged it off. Kids these days, always busy. The next week at the library, I ran into Mrs. Thompson from down the street, gossip queen, but harmless. She pulled me aside by the romance novels, her whisper conspiratorial. "Heard about your wild youth, Evelyn. Sounds like quite the adventure." Her eyes twinkled with mischief. I laughed, confused. "What do you mean?" She waved a hand. "Oh, just something Emily mentioned at book club." "Parties, boys." "You were a firecracker." My stomach dipped. "Book club?" Emily went to the neighborhood one, but why share my stories? I'd only told her bits in confidence. "It's nothing," I said, forcing a smile. But as I shelved books later, the weight of it nagged. Why bring it up? Then, David's visits grew shorter. He'd drop by for coffee, but his eyes darted, conversations clipped. "How's the baby prep?" I'd ask, pouring cream into his mug. The clink of spoon against ceramic familiar. "Good, good," he'd mutter, not meeting my gaze. Once, he asked about my diaries out of nowhere. "Mom, those old journals in the attic, ever think of tossing them?" I paused, mid-sip. "Why?" he shrugged. "Just clutter. Emily was up there helping, said they take up space." Helping? I hadn't asked her to. A chill crept in, but I pushed it away. "They're memories, son. Harmless." Emily's behavior shifted too, subtle, like a cloud passing over the sun. At our next brunch, she arrived with a store-bought quiche, not her usual homemade. "Too tired to bake," she said. But her eyes lingered on my china cabinet, where I kept family photos. "You look so young here," she commented, pointing to one from my 20s, me in a sundress, laughing at a picnic. "Bet you have stories." Her tone was playful but probing. I changed the subject, but later, alone, I climbed to the attic. Dust motes danced in the flashlight beam as I rummaged. The box of diaries. It was there, but the lid askew, pages thumbed. Had she read them? No, I told myself, probably just cleaning. Paranoia, Evelyn. You're being silly. Yet the suspicions built. Phone calls from David came less often, texts generic, busy week. At a prenatal appointment, I tagged along to Emily invited me, or so I thought, she whispered with the nurse, glancing my way. Was it my imagination? Then, a neighbor's comment at the grocery store. Emily says you're quite the storyteller from back in the day. Storyteller? My past wasn't a tale for sharing. I confronted David lightly over lunch one day. Sandwiches on the patio, birds chirping overhead. Son, has Emily been talking about me? He fidgeted with his napkin. What? No, Mom, she's just concerned about the baby. Wants everything perfect. Concerned? About what? The pebble became a stone. I started noticing her helpful suggestions. Maybe hire a professional organizer for the attic, Evelyn. Or, David mentioned your diaries. Sounds like therapy material. Therapy? My past was healed, lessons learned, a brief rebellious phase, nothing criminal. But her words planted doubt. Was she judging me? Trying to push me out? I lay awake nights, ceiling fan whirring, piecing it together. The fresh start with her felt tainted now, like milk on the verge of souring. Little did I know, the betrayal was already baking, ready to be served. The air in my kitchen felt heavier now, like the humidity before a storm. Those cookies Emily baked sat untouched on the counter after that awful conversation, their sweetness mocking me. I couldn't shake David's words. To be safe. Safe from what? Me? His own mother, who'd changed his diapers, bandaged his scraped knees, stayed up nights praying through his fevers? The thought clawed at me, sharp as a splinter under a fingernail. I sat at the table, the ticking of the wall clock loud in the silence, my coffee gone cold. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that Emily hadn't meant to twist my past into something ugly. But the diaries, those private pages, kept circling in my mind. How had they gotten them? And why use them to paint me as unfit? Days passed, each one tighter with tension. I kept up appearances, smiling at Emily when she dropped by with a new ultrasound photo, her voice chirpy as she pointed out the baby's tiny hands. Look, Evelyn, she's waving, she'd say, and I'd nod, my lips tight. The warmth I once felt for her, cooling like a forgotten pie on the sill. I watched her closer. Now, noticed how her eyes flicked away when I mentioned the attic or my past. David, too, seemed distant, his hugs quicker, his calls shorter. Work's crazy, Mom, he'd say, but I heard the strain in his voice, like he was holding something back. It was a Thursday evening, the sky bruised purple with dusk, when the truth cracked open like an egg. I'd been restless all day, the kind of unease that makes your skin itch. After supper, leftover casserole. The cheese congealed on the plate. I decided to check the attic myself. I hadn't been up there since Emily's cleaning spree months ago. The stairs creaked under my weight, the air growing musty as I climbed. My flashlight beam danced across boxes, old lamps, Harold's golf clubs gathering dust. There it was, the wooden chest where I kept my diaries, tucked behind a pile of Christmas decorations. I knelt, my knees protesting, and opened it. The leather-bound journals were there, but not as I'd left them. Pages were dog-eared, some loose, like they'd been handled roughly. My heart thudded. Someone had been reading them. I pulled out the top diary, its cover faded, the ink smudged from my 20-something scrawl. I flipped to a marked page, a confession from 1983, when I was wild, reckless, caught up with a crowd who partied too hard. A fling with a married man, a mistake I'd buried with shame. I'd written it to purge, to forgive myself. Below it, in fresh ink, was a post-it note, not my handwriting. Unfit? Discuss with D. My breath caught. Emily's neat cursive. She'd read my pain, my growth, and weaponized it. I sat back on my heels, the attic's chill seeping into my bones. Why turn my son against me? I should have stopped there, gone to bed, let it simmer. But I couldn't. I grabbed the diaries, all 5 of them, and marched downstairs. The air in my kitchen felt heavier now, like the humidity before a storm. Those cookies Emily baked sat untouched on the counter after that awful conversation, their sweetness mocking me. I couldn't shake David's words. To be safe. Safe from what? Me? His own mother, who'd changed his diapers, bandaged his scraped knees, stayed up nights praying through his fevers? The thought clawed at me, sharp as a splinter under a fingernail. I sat at the table, the ticking of the wall clock loud in the silence, my coffee gone cold. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that Emily hadn't meant to twist my past into something ugly. But the diaries, those private pages, kept circling in my mind. How had they gotten them? And why use them to paint me as unfit? Days passed, each one tighter with tension. I kept up appearances, smiling at Emily when she dropped by with a new ultrasound photo, her voice chirpy as she pointed out the baby's tiny hands. "Look, Evelyn, she's waving," she'd say, and I'd nod, my lips tight. The warmth I once felt for her, cooling like a forgotten pie on the sill. I watched her closer. Now, noticed how her eyes flicked away when I mentioned the attic or my past. David, too, seemed distant, his hugs quicker, his calls shorter. "Work's crazy, Mom," he'd say, but I heard the strain in his voice, like he was holding something back. It was a Thursday evening, the sky bruised purple with dusk, when the truth cracked open like an egg. I'd been restless all day, the kind of unease that makes your skin itch. After supper, leftover casserole. The cheese congealed on the plate. I decided to check the attic myself. I hadn't been up there since Emily's cleaning spree months ago. The stairs creaked under my weight, the air growing musty as I climbed. My flashlight beam danced across boxes, old lamps, Harold's golf clubs gathering dust. There it was, the wooden chest where I kept my diaries, tucked behind a pile of Christmas decorations. I knelt, my knees protesting, and opened it. The leather-bound journals were there, but not as I'd left them. Pages were dog-eared, some loose, like they'd been handled roughly. My heart thudded. Someone had been reading them. I pulled out the top diary, its cover faded. The ink smudged from my 20-something scrawl. I flipped to a marked page, a confession from 1983, when I was wild, reckless, caught up with a crowd who partied too hard. A fling with a married man, a mistake I'd buried with shame. I'd written it to purge, to forgive myself. Below it, in fresh ink, was a post-it note, not my handwriting. Unfit? Discuss with D. My breath caught. Emily's neat cursive. She'd read my pain, my growth, and weaponized it. I sat back on my heels, the attic's chill seeping into my bones. Why? Why turn my son against me? I should have stopped there, gone to bed, let it simmer. But I couldn't. I grabbed the diaries, all 5 of them, and marched downstairs. My hands shook as I dialed David. "Come over," I said when he answered, my voice steadier than I felt. "Now, bring Emily." He hesitated, mumbled something about it being late, but I cut him off. "It's important, son." 30 minutes later, and they were at my door, David in a rumpled hoodie, Emily in yoga pants, her ponytail swinging like nothing was wrong. The cookies were still on the counter, a silent witness. We sat in the living room, the lamplight casting long shadows. I held the diaries in my lap, their weight grounding me. "David," I started, my voice low, "why do you think I'm unfit to watch your daughter?" He blinked, startled, glancing at Emily. She shifted, crossing her arms. "Mom, it's not like that," he said. But his eyes betrayed him. Guilt, confusion. I held up the diary with the post-it. "Then what's this?" Emily's face froze, her lips parting slightly. "Evelyn, she began, but I cut her off, reading the note aloud. "Unfit? Discuss with D, your handwriting? Emily, you went through my private journals, cherry-picked my worst moments, and fed them to my son." David's face crumpled. "Mom, what's she talking about?" I opened the diary. Read a passage, my fling, my regret, the lessons I'd learned. This was me at 23, David. I was young, stupid. But I changed, became the mother who raised you. I turned to Emily, my voice steady but sharp. "You used my past to scare him, to make him think I'd hurt my own grandchild." She flushed, her eyes darting to the floor. "I was protecting the baby," she whispered. "I read those diaries and I got scared. You were so wild back then." "Scared?" I snapped, the word bitter on my tongue. "You didn't ask me, didn't talk to me. You spread lies, turned my son against me." David's head dropped into his hands. "Emily, you said she was reckless, that she'd be a bad influence. Why didn't you tell me it was just old diaries?" She stammered. "I thought I was doing the right thing." But her voice cracked. And I saw it. Fear, yes, but also control. She wanted to be the perfect mother, the only one in the spotlight. My past was her weapon to keep me at arm's length. The room went quiet, the tick of the clock deafening. I felt raw, exposed, like my heart had been laid bare on the coffee table. David looked between us, torn. "Mom, I didn't know," he said, his voice small. I trusted her." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't ready to soften. Not yet. The betrayal stung too deep. She'd taken my private pain, twisted it, and served it like those damn cookies. But this wasn't the end. I had to decide what came next. How to reclaim my place in my son's life, in my future granddaughter's. The diaries lay heavy in my hands, proof of my past but also my strength. I wasn't that reckless girl anymore. And I'd make sure they both knew it. The silence in my living room was thick, like fog rolling in off a lake at dawn. David sat with his head in his hands, the diaries still on my lap.
Their worn covers a reminder of the girl I'd left behind. Emily's tears glistened in the lamplight, but they didn't move me, not yet. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of hurt and anger. But I wasn't about to let this betrayal define me. I'd raised a son who valued truth. And I'd be damned if I let lies steal my place as his mother, as a grandmother. I took a deep breath, the air tasting faintly of those cursed cookies still on the kitchen counter. "David," I said, my voice steady as I could manage, "I need you to listen. Not to her, not to rumors. To me." He looked up, his eyes red, searching mine like he was a boy again, lost. Emily shifted, her hands twisting in her lap, but I kept my gaze on my son. "I'm not that girl in those diaries," I said. "I made mistakes, yes, but I learned from them. Built a life. Built you." I paused, letting the words settle. "But I won't beg for your trust. I'm going to show you who I am." Emily opened her mouth, maybe to protest, but I held up a hand. "Not now, Emily. You've said enough." I stood, the diaries tucked under my arm, and walked to the kitchen. The floorboards creaked under my slippers, a familiar sound that grounded me. I needed a plan, something to cut through the fog of her lies. My first thought was to burn the diaries, erase the evidence she'd twisted, but no. They were my story, my truth, flaws and all. Instead, I decided to own them. To tell David everything, not just the snippets Emily had weaponized. But first, I needed to know how far her rumors had spread. Had she told the neighbors more than I'd heard? The book club? Our church group? The thought made my stomach churn, like I'd swallowed sour milk. The next morning, I woke early, the sky still gray outside my bedroom window. I brewed coffee, the gurgle of the machine a small comfort, and sat at my desk with a notepad. My hands shook as I wrote names, people who might have heard. Emily's gossip. Mrs. Thompson from the library. Pastor Jane, the book club ladies. I'd start there, not to confront but to understand. I dressed carefully, simple blouse. My mother's pearl earrings for courage, and drove to the library. The smell of old books greeted me, usually calming. But today it felt like walking into a courtroom. Mrs. Thompson was at the counter, her glasses perched on her nose. "Evelyn, dear," she said, smiling. But I caught the flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice light. "Heard any good stories lately?" She chuckled, then leaned in. "Well, Emily's been chatty at book club. Said you had a colorful past, parties? A few scandals." She winked. Like it was harmless gossip, but my chest tightened. "Scandals?" I asked, forcing a laugh. "What did she say?" Mrs. Thompson shrugged. "Just that you were wild, maybe not the best role model for a grandkid. But I told her, Evelyn's solid as they come." I nodded. Thanked her, but my mind raced. Emily hadn't just told David, she was sowing doubt everywhere.
Back home, I called Pastor Jane, my voice steady despite the knot in my throat. "Jane, has Emily mentioned anything about me at church?" A pause, then her gentle tone. "She did say something about your past, Evelyn. Worried about the baby's influences? I told her to talk to you directly." My grip tightened on the phone. Emily was building a case, painting me as unfit before the baby even arrived. I thanked Jane, hung up, and stared at the diaries on my desk. Enough, I wasn't hiding anymore. That evening, I invited David over, alone. Emily protested, but he came, his footsteps heavy on my porch. We sat at the kitchen table, the cookies long gone, replaced by a pot of chamomile tea, its floral scent soft in the air. I slid the diaries toward him. "Read them," I said. "All of them. Not just what she picked out." He hesitated, his fingers brushing the covers. "Mom, I don't need to—" "You do," I cut in. "You need to know me. The good, the bad, the whole truth." I told him about my 20s, the mistakes, the growth, the love I'd found with his father that changed me. My voice cracked as I spoke of Harold, how he'd seen past my flaws. David listened, his eyes softening, but I saw the hurt there too. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he asked. I sighed. "Because it was done, son. I didn't think my past would be used against me." He left with the diaries, promising to read them. I felt lighter, like I'd shed a heavy coat, but the fight wasn't over. Emily's lies had spread too far, and I needed to reclaim my name, not just for me, but for the granddaughter I'd yet to meet. I started planning a family meeting, one where I'd lay everything bare, no more secrets, no more lies baked into cookies, just the truth, raw and real, like the woman I'd become. Word spread like wildfire in our small neighborhood, the kind that leaps from fence to fence on a dry day. I hadn't meant for it to go public, not at first, but once I started owning my truth, it took on a life of its own. After David left with the diaries that night, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, the chamomile tea gone cold in my mug, its steam long faded. The house felt emptier, echoes of our confrontation bouncing off the walls. But I knew I couldn't stop there. Emily's rumors had tainted my name in the community, the library, the book club, even church. If I wanted real healing, I had to face it head on. Let the consequences fall where they may. Not for revenge, child, but for justice. The moral kind where truth shines a light on the shadows. A few days later, David called, his voice heavy over the line. Mom, I read them. All of them. I could hear the rustle of pages in the background, like he was still holding one. I'm sorry, I should have trusted you. My heart softened a bit, but the hurt lingered. What about Emily? I asked. He sighed. She's defensive, says she was just worried. But I told her we need to fix this. Fix it how? I wondered. But he had an idea, a family dinner, just the three of us.
To talk it out. I agreed, though my stomach knotted like twisted yarn. That Sunday, they came over. I cooked pot roast, the savory aroma filling the house. Carrots and potatoes simmering soft. Comfort food, I hoped, to ease the tension. We ate in near silence at first. Forks clinking against plates. The grandfather clock ticking in the hall. Then David cleared his throat. Emily, tell Mom what you told me. She set her fork down. Her face pale, ponytail limp like she'd lost her spark. Evelyn, she started, her voice small. I shouldn't have read your diaries. Or shared bits with people. I was scared, about being a mom, about sharing the baby with you. I thought if I made you seem less perfect, David would lean on me more. Her eyes met mine, teary. It was wrong. I'm sorry. Sorry? The word hung there, but it didn't erase the damage. I'd heard whispers at the grocery store that week, neighbors eyeing me funny. One even asking if the scandals were true. Emily's gossip had made me the talk of the town, questioning my fitness as a grandma. I nodded slowly, cutting a piece of roast, the knife scraping the plate. Apologies are a start, Emily. But you've hurt more than me. You've hurt our family, our community. David reached for her hand, but I continued. We need counseling. All of us. To rebuild trust. She agreed, head bowed, and David looked relieved. But the public part? That came unintended. At church the next week, Pastor Jane pulled me aside after service. The organ music fading in the background. The scent of lilies from the altar strong. Evelyn, words getting around about. Emily's, misunderstandings. Folks are asking. I hadn't spread it, but David had talked to a cousin. Emily to a friend, small towns, you know. Soon, the book club ladies called, Mrs. Thompson leading the charge. We heard Emily exaggerated, she said over tea at my house. Her cup clattering in its saucer. We're on your side, dear. Emily faced the fallout hardest. At her next book club, she confessed, tearfully. From what I heard, admitting she'd invaded my privacy, spread half-truths. The group was kind but firm. One member, a retired teacher, lectured her on respect for elders' pasts. We've all got skeletons, she said. Emily came home red-eyed, David told me later. At work, her graphic design clients, some local, heard whispers too. Though nothing legal, just social ripples. She lost a small gig, a neighbor's brochure job. Because, trust issues, they said. It wasn't vengeance. It was consequence. Emily had to own her actions. Learn that lies don't just hurt the target, they boomerang. For me, the public I brought unexpected support. Neighbors dropped by with casseroles, sharing their own youthful mistakes over coffee. You're human, Evelyn, one said, patting my hand. It mended something in me, knowing my past didn't define me. But it also highlighted the ethical line, privacy invaded, trust broken. No laws were shattered, but morals were. Emily started counseling first, alone, then we joined as a family. The therapist's office smelled of lavender diffuser. Chairs in a circle like a peace talk. We aired it all, my pain, her fears, David's confusion. Tears flowed, tissues crumpled, but slowly, understanding bloomed. Emily's motivation? Insecurity from her own distant family, fearing I'd overshadow her motherhood. It didn't excuse her, but it humanized her. The community healed too. At a church potluck, Emily approached me publicly, hugging me tight amid the chatter and clink of plates. "I'm truly sorry, Mom," she whispered. Whispers turned to nods of approval. The consequences had taught us all, karma. In its quiet way, balancing the scales. As the weeks turned into months, the sharp edges of betrayal began to dull, like a knife worn from use. Emily's apology at the potluck lingered in my mind. Her hug tentative but real amid the hum of church folk chatting over pie and coffee. We didn't snap back to normal. Wounds like that don't heal overnight, but we started rebuilding. Brick by careful brick. Counseling became our anchor. Those weekly sessions in the therapist's cozy office, with its soft lighting and tissues always at the ready. The lavender scent grew familiar, a signal that we were doing the hard work. Emily opened up more, sharing her fears of inadequacy. How her own mother's absence left her terrified of sharing the maternal role. "I saw you as a threat," she admitted one session. Her voice breaking, hands clasped tight in her lap. David squeezed my hand then, his silent support warming me like sunlight after rain. I forgave, but not blindly. Forgiveness, child, isn't forgetting, it's choosing peace over poison. I set boundaries, no more uninvited help in my attic. No sharing my stories without permission. Emily nodded, her eyes earnest, and slowly, she proved her change. She invited me to baby classes. Her hand on mine as we felt the kicks through her belly. The miracle of life pulsing under our fingers. "What do you think she'll be like?" she'd ask, and I'd smile, picturing Harold's grin in her tiny face. David bridged us, cooking family dinners where laughter returned. Tentative at first, like testing ice on a pond. One night, over lasagna, the cheese bubbling golden, he said, "Mom, I'm proud of you for speaking up." His words mended a crack in my heart I didn't know was there. The community played its part too. The rumors faded, replaced by stories of my resilience. At the library, kids still gathered for my reading hour. Their small hands clapping at story's end, reminding me of my worth. Mrs. Thompson even started a second chances book club theme, winking at me as we discussed tales of redemption. It felt like the town had wrapped me in a quilt, patches of support sewn together. My garden bloomed brighter that spring, hydrangeas bursting pink. The soil rich from winter's rest. I'd kneel there, dirt under my nails, pulling weeds and reflecting. My past wasn't a stain anymore. It was a chapter. It felt like the town had wrapped me in a quilt, patches of support sewn together. My garden bloomed brighter that spring, hydrangeas bursting pink. The soil rich from winter's rest. I'd kneel there, dirt under my nails, pulling weeds and reflecting. My past wasn't a stain anymore. It was a chapter, one that taught me strength. Emily joined me sometimes, her belly rounding, as we planted seeds for the baby's future garden. "Teach me how," she'd say, and I'd show her. Our hands in the earth together. Oh, child, as I sit here now on my porch, the evening sun dipping low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I reflect on it all with a heart that's mended but wiser. Little Harper sleeps in her bassinet nearby, her breath soft and even, a reminder that life pushes forward, blooming anew from the ashes of hurt. Those cookies Emily baked, laced not with poison, but with fear and misunderstanding, they could have torn us apart forever. But instead, they forced us to face the truths we'd buried, to sift through the lies and find the gold of forgiveness beneath. I've learned, in my 62 years, that family isn't just blood. It's the choices we make to hold on, to heal when betrayal stings like salt in a wound. Emily's actions were wrong, rooted in her own pains. But owning them opened doors to growth we all needed. And me? I stood in my dignity, sharing my past not as shame, but as testament to change. Karma doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, guiding us back to love. If there's a lesson here, it's this: don't let secrets fester. And when lies spread, meet them with your truth. It might hurt, like ripping off a bandage. But the air that rushes in brings healing. We've come far, family dinners filled with real laughter now. Harper's tiny hands reaching for us all. I'm grateful, truly, for the woman I've become through it. Would you have done the same, child? Face the betrayal head on, or let it simmer? Think on it, and if this story touched you, subscribe for more tales from the heart. Share your thoughts below, we're all in this journey together.